So since Ash Wednesday, we've been following Jesus towards the cross with a worship series called Full to the Brim, reflecting on how God offers not just enough love or grace or welcome, but more than enough, more than we can imagine, more than any universe could contain. From the beginning of all things, God proclaimed us at creation to be not just good enough, but very good. And God didn't just peace out and leave us to do our own thing after that. God has stepped in and spoken to the prophets and cleared a path through the sea and guided us home. And God hasn't even just stopped there. God took on flesh and was born into the world, living through all the experiences of the human condition, a life of compassion. And today we are full to the brim indeed, full of excitement, full of relief to be able to gather in person, full of joy to be able to celebrate Easter together for the first time since 2019. Full of breakfast, full of chocolate, full of caffeine. Am I projecting? I might be projecting. Maybe the guys in the kitchen have also been. Anyway. So my Easter began last night when I shared this year's Easter Vigil service on our Facebook and YouTube pages. And yes, this is a shameless plug. Please like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. It's an easy way to get weekly invitations to reflection, recordings of services and sermons and Bible studies, and the latest news about upcoming events and even more. I think we've got like 400 videos on our YouTube channel as of this week, which is a lot of videos and video editing. Anyway, Easter Vigil is an ancient tradition, a service that starts at sundown or maybe at midnight, maybe just before dawn, perhaps even all through the night in some communities. There are prayers and psalms and often music. Our service last night included 8 pieces of music performed by Ken, Josette, Doris, and/or me. But at its heart are stories. The story of creation, the story of the great flood, the story of the binding and near sacrifice of Isaac, the story of the parting of the Red Sea, the story of Ezekiel's dream about God breathing life into a deep valley of dry bones, the story of 3 young men who walked unscathed out of a fiery furnace to continue to profess their faith, the story of Jonah, the story of God's people being called home from exile, readings about God's wisdom and gift of salvation and invitation into new life. The stories move through time to bring us to the tomb, but the tomb is empty, and the stories don't end there. Our gospel reading this morning comes to us from Luke chapter 24, verses 1 through 12. Hear now the word of the Lord. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground, but the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and on the 3rd day rise again." Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all of this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb, stooping and looking in, and he saw the linen cloths by themselves. Then he went home, amazed at what had happened. This is the word of the Lord. At Christmas, we read the story of the first time Christ's birth was announced. a whole host of angels appear in the sky and burst into song, a loud, bold, joyous, overwhelming, dramatic thunderclap of a miracle. We were just minding our own business, hanging out with sheep, when all of a sudden, bam, gospel is shouted. Glory to God in all caps. But at Easter, the gospel is whispered. The women trudge to the tomb, eyes full of tears, arms full of burial spices, but they find the tomb empty, and they drop to the ground in terror and awe and bewilderment. And two mysterious men dressed in dazzling white tell them gently, "He's not here, but is risen." Remember what he told you, the gospel whispers. As I said last night, our stories of faith build on each other. It wasn't just that God created us and called us good. It wasn't just the rainbow of the covenant. It wasn't just the Bible's first story about love. It wasn't just the grand and dramatic exodus from slavery. It wasn't just the bones or the furnace or the big fish or the end of the exile. It wasn't just any one of those things. It was all of them. And even at the grave, it isn't just that the tomb is empty. Remember what he told you, the gospel whispers. Remember that this isn't the end, it's just the beginning. Remember. And the women do remember. They drop everything and run back to tell the other disciples, not because they were told to, but because the news is so good that they can't help it. It has to be shared. Remember that this isn't the end. That's the good news. Remember that God's love can't be stopped, not by doubt, not by Rome, not even by death. That is the good news. Remember that the story keeps going. That's the good news. Our stories build on each other. And the resurrection means that our stories never end, and God is still speaking, and the gospel is still whispering gently, remember, remember, remember. And with every step as we run to share the news, our hearts beat, risen, risen, risen. And all of this together means that we don't just come together this morning to tell the story of Jesus. It's the story of us, of all of us, and everyone we love, and everyone Jesus calls us to love. Because the good news is that we are pulled into the gospel, that our stories don't end. The resurrection isn't just enough. It's more than enough, and more to come. An invitation into an expansive story and an expansive life that is bigger and better than the story and the life we knew last week.